What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It's the Earthmaster back here on this Thursday night. It is January 26, 2023. Can't believe it's almost February here of the new year. About 9:56 p.m. here along the west coast in California. Latest quake shows some activity here around the eastern edge of the Java Trench. Also some activity I've seen popping up here on the Petrolia station there in Northern California. So a little bit of activity there in Northern Cal. Let's go ahead and check out latest activity here across the flat scale model Earth. Looks like we did have a 5.0 coming in to the western Indian Antarctica ridge. Now this is the Australia plate and the Antarctica plate down here. This is a divergent boundary, meaning a separation of the seafloor. It's been a while since we've seen any activity way down south here. Historical data does tell us, though, that there's quite a bit of activity along here, including some earthquakes around the 4.5 to 5.0, possibly even up there around the 6.0 region, but not a huge area for large earthquakes. But this should possibly apply further strain and pressure up here along the Australia plate areas north, and even potentially around the New Zealand area. A look at New Zealand here did show that 6.0 earthquake along the Kermadec Trench. 135 kilometers deep for that 6.0. Now let's see what's going on with the GeoNet servers here. Let me zoom over to the latest data. Looks like a reported earthquake about 6 hours ago, 2.2. Going to include all these earthquakes here. See what we got. A couple of these deleted. Looks like North Island, New Zealand region seen some smaller earthquake activity that was deleted. No major current uptick happening. Mostly all very small microquakes across the region. Now look at the volcanic activity here. Volcanic drums in the area. Shows fairly calm conditions. Of course, here's that 6-pointer that showed up fairly nicely up here around the couple different volcanic stations. All right, further up north, let's see what we got going on here. I lost my, apparently I lost my map. Let me refresh this data and see what's going on here with the USGS. That's a little odd. I lost the USGS station. Are we still live? Looks like we are. That's a little weird. Not for sure what's going on here. Stand by for just a second. Let me refresh this and see what's going on. Kind of looks like it's just strictly related to the USGS station. There we go. We're back. Sometimes I have a feeling they like to pull the plug when I'm doing updates, just to see what kind of response they can get from me. Well, there you go. So a little bit of swarming, and USGS, I kind of count on you guys. We all kind of count on you guys. There's obviously other agencies, but the USGS is a very firm, government agencies that covers a lot of earthquake activity out here across the globe, and they have some very sophisticated equipment, and I pretty much rely on those folks. So I try not to dog them too much. They're more of a positive mindset, even though they're sometimes late in their earthquake reporting. I do appreciate the USGS. So earthquake activity around the Elsinore fault system, a little segment down here, seeing a little bit of uptick here today. Most of this activity here earlier, and also one earthquake last night, a 2.5 coming into the region. Now, no major swarming kicking up around the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. Looks pretty quiet for now. Into the Bay Area of California, things look very typical. No major swarms, no major unusual activity. Up here off the San Andreas Fault, earlier tonight, we did see a 1.9 near the Point Arena area. Now, that's just off of the northern branch here of the San Andreas. Kind of an odd earthquake out there. Don't really see too much movement, but a little bit of noticeable activity kicking up here around the northern California area, more specifically into the areas of the southern end of the Cascadia And let's go ahead and take a look at the Cascadia. I have not seen this tonight. Ooh, goodness. 238 epicenters of tremor into Northern California right now. So I'm kind of curious. We're going to go back here. Oh, since about the January 1st time frame. And I kind of want to see what's going on here. I know we had a pretty large uptick up here into Vancouver Island range, but really can't discredit all this activity. That's a lot of activity here, folks. So over the course of 25 days, 26 days, 4,569 epicenters of tremor along the Cascadia. There's a couple segments here missing, but most of our tremor does occur in the southern segment and also up here around the Vancouver Island ranges. So the movement here in Northern California, we can see the activity over the past, we'll go back to the last 30 days here. We can see the uptick in the pressure gradients upstream. Okay, these earthquakes that are happening here in Northern California are upstream of the tremor, this 5.4, 30 kilometers deep. It's associated with the Cascadia subduction zone. Don't let anyone tell you that this is not. This is Cascadia activity here. And there's been a lot. Remember that tremor activity occurring down dip? The tremor down here? Even though it looks like it's over Redding and the western side of the valley near Red Bluff, all this activity is deeper on the map here. About 45 kilometers deep and deeper than this earthquake activity that's occurring west here, which is roughly between 22 and possibly down to about 30 kilometers. So a lot of strain being built up here. We're seeing that earthquake activity pop off over the last 30 days. So obviously there's earthquake activity. That means there's some pressure going on here, right? Notice that migration of earthquake activity upstream right around the Cascadia subduction zone, but it doesn't really get any shallower. A little bit, but deeper activity here to the east, a little bit more shallower up here to the west. Either way, southern segment here is kind of crazy, right? 323 years ago on this date was the estimated 8.7 and 9.2 magnitude earthquake that occurred here along the Cascadia. Wouldn't that be something? If we seen a similar earthquake on the anniversary of the Cascadia, that would be crazy. Either way, I think we can agree. Tremor activity, down dip, creates further strain upstream. And therefore, we see that activity over the past 30 days ramping up here off the coast of Northern California. I kind of like to point that out, folks. I don't know if the USGS goes into strict detail about it, but here on this channel, we kind of like to explain things a little bit about what's going on here around this very sensitive area. Either way, there's a lot of strain built up here, and, who knows when the next Cascadia will strike. It could be tonight, it could be right now, it could be 100 years from now. We never know. Can't really predict it, right? But we can look at tremor activity and kind of get a little good general indication of what's going on down dip. All right, some activity, not down dip, but just upstream, north of the Mount St. Helens area. A couple very small earthquakes. And on that note, let's go ahead and check out the volcanic seismicity map here. Let's see if I can spit that out. It's outside starting up a little bonfire. I think I breathed in a little bit of smoke out there. Let's see what we have here across the mountain. There's that earthquake, actually pretty nicely there. So that's going to be the 2.4 near Mossy Rock, Washington. Now, this sits about 10 miles northwest of the Mount St. Helens area in Washington. 10 miles, not a big deal. That earthquake occurring about 8 kilometers below the surface. Now, this is the Cascade Mountain Range, and this is all built up, obviously due to the Cascadia. There's a lot going on below this range here, but this is fairly shallow earthquake activity. Now, yeah, that's going to be the 2-pointer. There's not a whole lot of other earthquake activity occurring on that graph. And a look at yesterday's activity. There's a little handful, but these are much smaller earthquakes here occurring around the Mount St. Helens area. I don't see any unusual activity in terms of volcanic tremor or anything across the Cascades. And a look here at the volcano hazards map still shows, pretty much all the volcanoes across the West Coast in the green status. How long is that going to persist? Who knows? But we can look for swarms, unusual activity underneath any of these volcanoes that could be pinpointing towards volcanic activity. But right now, it looks fairly calm. Pretty broad activity across Nevada and also around Long Valley supervolcano. Got a couple smaller earthquakes out here. But seeing a little noticeable increase in activity across western Nevada. Nothing major, but definitely some activity kind of kicking up there. Into areas around Texas, not a whole lot going on. Most of this activity from this morning, we did have 2.9 out around the Pecos, Texas area. Of course, we got a lot of wastewater disposal wells out there. Oklahoma as well. Far as the Caribbean plate goes, most of the activity here from this morning time period. A couple of smaller earthquakes around the Mona Passage region, but no major swarm currently taking place. And we need to watch that because the last time the swarming came to a halt, we've seen some larger earthquake activity here in the subduction zone. Colombia and Panama, Costa Rica, one earthquake tonight, 103 kilometers deep into the Colombian Trench for that 4.5. South America, even though we have one earthquake here showing up in the Peru area, there's definitely been a little bit more, I would say. Let's go ahead and check out South America. Looks like a couple 3s and 2s here on the EMSC model, but generally light activity across the South America region. Quite a bit of activity around the Java Trench, including, check that out, 3.9 coming in up here around our watch area. That's going to be areas around the Myanmar region. So latest earthquake shows a 4.3 Indonesia earlier this evening. Got to watch this area here for some larger scale activity. It's been very quiet in terms of seismic activity here recently, but notice that we're starting to get the movement coming in here from the east, or I should say from the west, headed east, down along the plate boundary, but also a good pressure movement here from the west, from the east headed to the west, along the Java Trench. Now, these should meet and produce possibly a larger earthquake around the northern end of the Java Trench up through the Myanmar area. So we'll watch that pretty closely. It's been migrating here over the last few hours. Been watching that pretty closely. Up here around the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench and the Japan Trench, got a 3.6 coming in just off the coast of Japan. Nothing really showing up here on the USGS map as far as larger scale activity goes. It's been our quiet spot, but it's kind of odd because this is a major subduction zone that builds up quite a bit of stress in a very short amount of time. There's multiple plate boundaries. Well, we got one plate boundary here, the North American plate and the Pacific plate, but also the Eurasia plate adding strain into this area of the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. Notice the arrows here. That's going to be the direction of the plate movement. Red arrows indicating subduction zone. All this plate movement here around the North American plate, the Eurasia plate, Filipino plate over here to the south, Pacific plate, all crunching this area. But we haven't seen any large-scale activity, so I think we're looking here, possibly. That's going to be our next zone for a mega quake. Got to watch that pretty closely. All right, let's see what else. Alaska, of course, they've seen that Aleutian Trench earthquake here, 5.1 earlier this morning. Not really seeing too much uptick. There's a little bit of swarming outside the Trident volcano. That's kind of been a off and on deal over the past few months, although no major adjustments there to that volcano. Just kind of been kicking off here with a little bit of swarming here recently. The Atlantic Ocean out here around the Rick James Ridge. Couple fives kicking off around noontime, my time. Around the, what's that, bite? Is that bite? A beat? Somewhere around there. A fracture zone. This is a little divergent boundary out here as well. All right, what else we have? Space weather. I'm guessing the asteroid that was supposed to come very close to Earth today missed us. I haven't seen anything on social media about any massive fireball. Expected to come within about 2,200 miles of the Earth's surface, so looks like we're safe for now. They discover quite a bit of these asteroids over a very short time frame. You know, as far as very recent activity goes, it's actually somewhat scary if you really think about it. You know, I know there's always eyes in the sky, but there's always dark areas of space that are kind of hiding the asteroids out there. So a little bit on the scary side, but you know what? I'm prepared if something were to happen. All right, space weather activity. Well, things are taking a nosedive here in the solar X-ray flux chart. We're starting to dip close to the under the C-flare category. And that is due to the sunspot regions here inactive. Not a whole lot going on here. Of course, if you're in a solar minimum, something like this would be like, oh my gosh, look at the uptick. But this is, you know, we're racing up towards the solar maximum. And this is pretty wimpy. Not a whole lot going on here. There's no major sunspots currently facing Earth, and they're not, even though there's a couple facing Earth, these are very wimpy sunspots. Wimpy, wimpy, wimpy is the word tonight, I guess. Looking at 99% chance for a C flare, 25% chance for an M flare. They have lowered the X flare probability down to 5, but I strictly believe those are probably less than 1% for the X flare and probably less than 10% for the M flare, as these sunspots pose absolutely no threat for any significant flaring. And obviously we see that across the magnetic image here, and that tells us right there that it's not looking probable for any major flare. Coronal holes, that's another story. Pretty wimpy. Green across the board. If you're a major space weather nerd like I am, you want to see this in the red. We're talking about G3 or G4 class storm. Right now, yeah, best to stay inside if you're up north. Not a whole lot going on for the auroras around the Canada area or the Antarctica area. Things are fairly calm across the region. Current space weather activity shows a little bit of elevated density, a little bit elevated speed, but things are pretty stable amongst the interplanetary magnetic structure here, the field, and that should play out for the remainder of the night. What's going on out here in the National Data Buoy Center? I shouldn't say earthquake, but a little bit of activity. Kick it up here on this station. Looks like it may be into a little bit of default mode here with this specific buoy that sits kind of at the eastern edge of the Java Trench. It's in event mode, but I'm really not seeing anything specific as to why it would be in event mode. Kind of looks like a little error phase going on with that buoy, which sometimes happens out there. in that beautiful area. All right, let's see what else is there, folks. That's about it. Again, as I mentioned on my update this morning, it's always good to take earthquake anniversaries to be prepared. And in this case, the Pacific Northwest, that includes Northern California, Oregon, Washington, Vancouver Island ranges, need to be prepared for the next big Cascadia megaquake. And, a lot of folks tend to think, well, we can handle it. It's a little bit of shaking and some high water. Well, a 9.2 earthquake out there along this area will be more than just a little shaking and some high water. It's always good to be prepared. If you feel some extreme shaking out here, it's best to be safe and head to higher ground. The main threat, I think, obviously will be the tsunami once that 9-pointer does hit along the Cascadia. But 323 years of built-up pressure. And we're talking about a 6-foot drop at least in the portions of the coast range. So not only are we talking about some high water, but you're dropping down about 6 feet. That's a pretty big deal. A lot of folks think, well, this is the life. This is our life out here. We love it. Got the beautiful Pacific Ocean, greenery. The ocean breeze coming in. Lovely, right? It's lovely. But there's danger. There's danger that lurks, folks. It's best to be prepared. It's no joke out here along the Cascadia. I don't want to see any, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of loss of life when that does kick up because people are not prepared. But today, 223 year anniversary of the Cascadia. Make sure you have the earthquake plan in place for your family, your area, and just be prepared. That's the main thing, guys. Alrighty, folks, we're going to jump off here. I think call it a night, possibly. And we'll see what tomorrow brings. Tomorrow's Friday already. Seems like I was just mentioning it was Friday. Have a good night, folks. We'll catch you guys back here sometime tomorrow. Take care.